بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، صلى الله وسلم على سيد الأولين والآخرين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه من اهتدى بهديه إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد, we got to chapter 7, باب قضاء الحاجة, باب آداب قضاء الحاجة, the chapter of the manners relating to answering the call of nature. And قضاء الحاجة, literally speaking, means doing the thing. And this word is used by the scholars, rahmatullahi alayhim, out of adab, out of manners, so that they don't explicitly use the terms that would otherwise be needed. And this is common in the Quran and in the Sunnah, that this is used. And that's the norm. That haya, being shy from using terms that aren't befitting, is always the norm for a Muslim. And there are times that require a person to be clear, even if that means saying things that make people feel awkward or uncomfortable, regardless. However, the norm is to always be shy in the terminology used. عن أنس بن مالك رضي الله عنه قال كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا دخل الخلاء وضع خاتمه أخرجه الأربع. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he entered the bathroom, the khala then was a place far away from people. Where they would use go to the toilet is a place far away from people, in whatever distant place, and use that. It wouldn't be similar to the toilets that we have today, the bathrooms that we have today. And so when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was about to begin in that, he would take off, he says, خَلَعَ خَاتِمَهُ or وَضَعَ خَاتَمَهُ. He would put down his ring. What did his ring say? What did the Prophet ﷺ's ring have written on it? Muhammad Rasulullah. Muhammad Rasulullah. So he would put it down because it has the name of Allah. And similarly, anything that has the name of Allah in it, you put down before entering the bathroom. Books of knowledge, okay, or anything like that, except things that are necessarily there and will cause hardship for you to put down. For example, if someone has banknotes, riyals, or other currencies, to say, for example, La ilaha illallah Muhammadun Rasulullah, and along those lines, then that can be put into the pocket, hidden away, and you can enter the toilet with that, because leaving it outside might be a problem, especially outside the house. Of course, entering something like the mishaf into the bathroom is forbidden, completely. Okay. As for these things, they are disliked. Entering something which has the name of Allah in it is makruh, disliked, into the bathroom. If it's the Quran, then it's completely forbidden. وعنه رضي الله عنه قال كان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا دخل الخلاء قال اللهم إني أعوذ بك من الخبث والخبائث. When the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, this is Anas again رضي الله عنه. Which year did Anas die رضي الله عنه? Who knows? Anas رضي الله عنه passed away in the same year. Anas ibn what? Malik. He passed away in the same year that Malik ibn Anas was born. So the Imam of Medina, rahimahullah, the founder of the second of the four madhahib of fiqh, Malik ibn Anas ibn Malik ibn Abi Amir al-Asbahi al-Himyari, rahimahullah, was born in 93 after the Hijrah. 93 years after the Hijrah he was born. So relatively close to the time of the Prophet ﷺ. Nobody was between him and the Prophet ﷺ except the Sahaba and Tabi'een. Anas ibn Malik radiallahu anh passed away in that year. 93 years after Hijrah, he passed 100 years of age. And he says, radiallahu anhu, because the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam made a dua for him to prolong his life. So he spent a very, very long time alive, beyond the age of 100, until he said, I forgot the exact number, I think it was 50. I buried 50 of my children with my own hand. Children, meaning children, grandchildren, grand-grandchildren, and so on. My own hand. So yeah, lived a very long life, radiallahu anhu. He says the Prophet ﷺ, when he entered the bathroom, the khala, the lavatory, would say, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-khubthi wal-khaba'ith. Oh Allah, I seek refuge with you from the devils, male and female. Or all of the evil deeds and spirits, depending on the translation, or the varying opinions on what al-khubth and al-khaba'ith means. And one opinion is that khubth and khaba'ith are the shayateen, male and female. Khubth, male, female, khaba'ith. Because impure areas are places that the shayateen like to be, and so a person needs to be extra careful doing that. And a lot do you hear about people who are touched by jinn or by shayateen in these kinds of areas. So it's important for a person to be extra careful. Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-khubthi wal-khaba'ith. Seeking refuge in Allah from the shayateen. وعنه أنس رضي الله عنه also قال كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يدخل الخلاء. The Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم used to enter the lavatory. فأحمل أنا وغلام نحوي إداوة من ماء. So me and a boy of roughly my age would carry a container, a leather hide full of water. وعنزة, and a stick, a spear-headed stick where he'd hang his clothing on and sort of conceal himself, used to cover himself. فَيَسْتَنْجِي بِالْمَاءِ. So he would wash his private parts with this water. Now, when it comes to washing one's private parts, the best thing to use for a person is to use, we're talking with the time of the Prophet ﷺ, the best thing to use was istijmar, then istinja, and so you'd use both of them. Istijmar is what? Using stones. Using stones to wipe impurity, that's istijmar. Then istinja is use of water. Yeah, use of water. So the sunnah, the best thing to do is to use stones, okay, to lessen the impurity, then to use water to completely get rid of the impurity, because stones themselves won't completely get rid of the impurity. In the place of stones now we have tissue, and it has the same ruling exactly. And we'll come to see later some hadith on this. So the best thing is to use tissue, 3 tissues to wipe, to lessen the impurity, and then completely finish off the washing with water. That is the best one can do. After that, the best one can do is use water only. So water alone versus tissue alone, water is better. And the third step is using tissue alone, and all of them are permissible and allowed. Whether you have water or whether you don't have water. Some people are mistaken in thinking that using tissue is only permissible if water is not present, which is incorrect, and it's against the ijma' of the ummah. All the scholars agree that using tissue alone is permissible, and there's no dispute amongst any scholar on that issue. However, the best without doubt is to use water. And Allah's verse, which was revealed in Surah At-Tawbah, فِيهِ رِجَالٌ يُحِبُّونَ أَن يَتَطَهَّرُوا وَاللَّهُ يُحِبُّ الْمُطَهِّرِينَ. In it, in the masjid, there are people who love to purify themselves, and Allah loves those who purify themselves. In some narrations it says that it came down, this verse was revealed on the people of Quba, who would use istijmar, wipe themselves, and then use water. So Allah considered them people who purify themselves and considered that one of the beloved acts to Allah. Why is it important to know that tissue itself is permissible? Because sometimes water isn't available. Some people make a big fuss out of it that's it, I can't pray, for example, because I haven't found any water to make istinja. No. Sometimes a person's outside and they use public toilets and they can't find water. Whatever the situation, tissue alone suffices, with the condition that it completely purifies the area so much that the rest can only be removed with water. Yeah? So tissue can reach a certain limit of purifying, and after that tissue won't do anything except only water can get rid of the rest. So the bare minimum when one wants to use tissue is to reach that level, a stage where nothing remains except remainders that water only can remove. Okay. وعن المغيرة بن شعبة رضي الله عنه قال لي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم خذ الإداوة فانطلق حتى توارى عني فقضى حاجته. متفق عليه. The three hadith we just mentioned now are all in the Sahihain, Bukhari and Muslim. And the first hadith that we mentioned is narrated by Al-Arba'ah. What does Al-Arba'ah mean? The four. Good. Who are the four? Who are the four Imams? No, not the four Imams of fiqh. These are Imams of... This is narrated by Rawah al-Arba'a, Akhrajahu al-Arba'a. Imams of who? Imams of what? Hadith. Imams of Hadith. These Imams of Hadith narrated these books. Ibn Hajar rahimahullah says in the beginning of his book, when I say the four, I mean these. When I say the five, I mean these. When I say the seven, I mean these. When I say agreed upon, I mean these. So he doesn't continuously repeat أخرجه البيهقي والدار قطني وابن ماجه وكذا etc etc etc. So who are the four? Who are the six Imams of Hadith? The first, Al-Bukhari, and then Muslim, then the four. And who are the four? Ibn Majah, last, At-Tirmidhi, Abu Dawood, and An-Nasa'i. Okay, these are the four. Abu Dawood, At-Tirmidhi, An-Nasa'i, and Ibn Majah. When the scholars say Al-Arba'a, the four, they mean these four. When they say the six, they mean these four plus Al-Bukhari and Muslim. So the first hadith was narrated by Al-Arba'a. Okay. So this hadith here by Al-Mughira radiallahu anhu says the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would say here, take the leather hide, which was a container which had water in it, that they would use to clean themselves after using the toilet. The first hadith I should have mentioned, the removing of the ring. The meaning of this hadith is correct. Al-Hafiz ibn Hajar says here, rahimahullah, وَهُوَ مَعْلُولٌ. It's defective. The hadith is defective, meaning it's not quite authentic. And in fact, Shaykh Nasiruddin al-Albani, rahimahullah, says it's munkar. Okay, it's rejected, the hadith itself. What did we say the principle was when it came to weak hadith? Is there benefit in them at all? Yeah, the meaning can always be correct. In fact, sometimes the meaning of a hadith can be agreed upon by all the Imams. All the Imams agree on this meaning, but when it comes to the hadith itself, it's not authentic. Okay? And that's the same here. Not authentic according to some of the Imams. However, the meaning is valid. Now, this hadith here, the Prophet ﷺ would say, take this and he will disappear, until he disappeared far away from me. That gives us the ruling that when a person uses the bathroom, they need to be separate from people in all ways. In all forms and ways, a person has to be as far away as possible. And that's a clear and logical mannerism. No one wants to be near people when doing that kind of thing. And so as far as possible in all ways, whether in sight or even hearing, or even the fact that people know that you are doing it. Okay, that you are using the bathroom. Especially back then, for example, a person would be far away. They could be seen, they wouldn't see your awrah, they wouldn't hear anything or see anything. However, still, you could be seen, your movements could be perhaps seen. And even that, a person hides away from from yes, pure adab and mannerism. Yeah. وعن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم اتقوا اللاعنين اتقوا اللاعنين. Safeguard yourself. The Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم says, be careful of, safeguard yourself from the two matters that cause cursing. Two things that cause one to be cursed. الذي يتخلى في طريق الناس وفي ظله. أخرجه مسلم, meaning narrated by Muslim rahimahullah. Now, the one who relieves himself in people's path and under their shade. And we've said this several times. When reading or understanding or learning about a hadith, a person has to learn the meaning of the hadith that is implemented in life generally, rather than restricting yourself to simply the wording of the hadith only. For example, now there are two types of people who read this hadith. One of them will say, oh, okay, so that means it's forbidden to relieve yourself under people's path and under people's shade. Alhamdulillah. Another person says, this prohibition, does the wisdom of this prohibition apply elsewhere as well? Can you harm people? Why is this forbidden? Why is it forbidden for a person to urinate or relieve themselves in people's path in their shade? What's the problem? Or is it a normal thing? Causing harm. Yeah, causing harm, causing irritation to people. If rather than restricting yourself to these two things, you apply this hadith in all matters. All your affairs. It includes littering in people's path. Okay, includes littering on the road. It includes being an obstruction to people on the road. All of that causes harm when people are on the roads and outside. Okay, so these kinds of ahadith that have clear wisdoms and clear meanings, a person implements them in all aspects of life where they apply. Okay. Now he says here, in Abu Dawood added, and the watering places where people go and collect water. And his wording is, guard against the three things which cause curse: defecating at the watering places, on the main roads, and in the places of shade. This is وَفِيهِ ضَعْفٌ رَحِمَهُ اللَّهِ, he says, and there's a weakness in this hadith. Ahmad reported it from Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, that the prohibition is at the places where water are collected, and both of these have weaknesses in them. Anyways, the meanings are, like we said, correct. Okay, urinating or defecating, wherever in a people's path, all of that is prohibited. All of it is prohibited. And Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu has the prohibition of relieving oneself under fruit-bearing trees and on the bank of a flowing river. Again, with a slight weakness in it, but the meaning once again is correct. Okay, so urinating under trees, which might be quite a common practice, especially someone who's, for example, on the motorway or on the road, in the middle of a road, in the middle of a journey, and doesn't know where to stop. So they get off quickly and urinate under a tree. Urinating outside the toilet is not prohibited, obviously, because it was done at the time of the Prophet ﷺ and after him and so on. However, you need to be wise on where you choose. Just because you don't know where the closest bathroom is, doesn't mean you can't think where do people walk and where do they not walk. If you get off, for example, you stop off on the motorway, on the side, to quickly use the bathroom, then again you think, which place am I doing it in? One, you need to be away from people where you're not going to be seen. Two, you need to take something, prepare something with you to wash yourself. Three, it needs to be a place where people aren't walking and using. And it needs to be under a place where these plants and fruits aren't being used. Not by animals, nor by humans. Okay, and there's a lot of that. Okay, there's a lot of sort of plant areas, just plants that are growing, not necessarily used for fruits and eating. Okay. وعن جابر رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا تغوط الرجلان فليتوارى كل واحد منهما عن صاحب ولا يتحدثا فإن الله يمقت على ذلك. If two people relieve themselves, each of them should conceal themselves from the other and not talk, because Allah detests that. Okay. أخرجه, this hadith, Ahmed وصححه Ibn al-Sakan Ibn al-Qattan. Ibn al-Sakan Ibn al-Qattan is from the two Imams of Hadith, and both of them graded this hadith authentic. Okay, both graded this hadith authentic. Al-Hakim also, from what I remember. And this can happen quite regularly now, especially where toilets are close together. Sometimes a person enters the bathroom of a restaurant or a library or whatever, and they have their cubicles. And two people are next to each other having a chat while using the toilet inside the cubicle. SubhanAllah. Wait, get out and have a chat until Yawm al-Qiyamah. Right now, you're going to go to the toilet for 5 minutes. We use the bathroom for 5 minutes. It's bad adab. In fact, hadith says Allah detests that. Allah yamqutu ala dhalik. Allah detests such a thing is done. Yeah. And in fact, it's a lack of manhood and a lack of maturity. Someone is chatting inside the toilet. What would you think about such a person? Think, what's going on? Yeah. And so that's from the adab that need to be kept in mind. And talking generally whilst in the bathroom is disliked for no reason. Okay, there's reason, such as, can you pass us the towel please? The tissue's run out, can you give me some tissue? Can you pass us the soap? All these kinds of things. That's for a need, out of a benefit. As for just having a chat, then no. In fact, you actively remain silent when someone speaks to you in the toilet, because that will teach you adab of using the bathroom, and it will teach them. Because when they see that people are not responding inside the bathroom, they know that, okay, this means that the bathroom is not time for talking, and so on. Of course, the strictness specifically is whilst using the toilet. Specifically. Okay, the matter is a lot less severe when just washing your hands, for example. Okay, or you've gone into the toilet quickly to brush your teeth, as an example. Yeah, or to wash your face, or to make wudu. The matter is a lot less severe and strict. But still, it's adab would say that you avoid even talking whilst there, even then. Yes?
What if your parents called you in the toilet? Should you respond?
Similarly, if on the bathroom, you wait, same thing. You wait. And they'll know, they should know. If you're close to the door, you can perhaps knock on the door to show that you're in the bathroom or whatever else. And you come out. Of course, necessity is a different issue. Problems arises, that's a different issue. You talk, or you even come out, or whatever. That's separate. Necessity, we can't keep bringing in necessity to every issue, because necessity has a different ruling every time. Yeah? Necessity is always an exception. However, the norm, generally speaking, is that you're silent, whether you're called by whoever it is. You're silent. One issue I forgot to mention, the dua, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-khubuthi wal khaba'ith. That is recommended to be said loudly. Doesn't say it, says it loudly, preferably. Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-khubuthi wal khaba'ith. And secondly, a person is recommended to say it even when they don't intend to use the bathroom. Yeah? You want to enter, like I said, to brush your teeth only. Or you enter to make wudu, or you enter only to wash your face. Even to grab something. You're going in just to pick up your phone, you left it inside, for example. Same thing. You say, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-khubuthi wal khaba'ith. Okay. وعن أبي قتادة رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا يمسن أحدكم ذكره بيمينه وهو يبول ولا يتمسح من الخلاء بيمينه ولا يتنفس في الإناء. Okay. None of you should touch their private parts with his right hand while urinating, nor clean himself using his right hand, nor breathe into the utensil he's drinking from. Okay, so we have three rulings. The first is not touching the private parts while urinating. with the right hand. So a person uses their left hand. 2, not cleaning themselves using the right hand, rather using the left hand. And 3, not breathing into the utensil they're drinking from, even if it is hot. Even if it's hot. It's not an exception that your tea is hot, and so you pick it up and breathe and breathe and breathe and breathe all the oxygen you have in your body until it cools down. Regardless, if you have time, you wait for it. If you have time, you wait for it to cool, or you use other methods of cooling. The ones your grandmother teaches you. You put the tea into another cup, and then back into the cup, and then back into the cup. After a couple of times, it cools. Or whatever you want to use, but no, preferably not breathing into it. Okay, this is makruh to do, it's disliked. It's disliked to do. And similarly, food. What's included is food, even though لا يتنفس في الإناء, the container, a vessel, usually is drunk from. However, even food also, the same thing applies. And they differ on why exactly a person shouldn't blow into hot food or hot drinks. And at the end of the day, it's out of adab and out of manners for food. And other fuqaha say also to not put off anyone else who might want to join you drinking and eating. Now, if someone sees you, for example, if I blow into this glass of water, no one's not going to want to drink from it. Okay, you blow into food, and again, no one's going to want to drink from that or eat from it. And so that's one of the wisdoms. Well, that's one of the wisdoms. If a person is in a rush, and there's no way a person can cool their food, and they are eating it alone, then the fuqaha give this an exception. They make this person exempt from this because the wisdom behind blowing in food, or the several wisdoms behind blowing in food, aren't found. Plus, he's got a haja, he's got a need. Okay, he's got a need. A person, for example, is late for work, breakfast is hot, and it's going to take them time to wait. Okay, the first step is, of course, waiting. Wait for it to cool down. Okay, and the second step, if you're in a bit of a rush, is to do something to cool it down. Whatever method you want to use. Add cold water to your tea. Do whatever other methods you want to use. The third step, if nothing is feasible and you need to be somewhere you need to go, then in this case, a person lightly blows into their food on the condition they're the only ones eating or drinking from it. There's no issue there, inshallah. Touching the private parts and cleaning the private parts again, using the left hand, because the principle here is all of the things that involve touching or going near impurity, the left hand is used, and all of the things that involve purity and righteous and good actions, the right hand is used. Okay, the right hand is used. That's why shaking someone's hand is done with the right hand. Putting on your shoes is done with the right first. Yeah, the right foot first and then the left. Entering the masjid, the right first, leaving with the left. Entering the bathroom, which foot first? The left, and then leaving with the right. And so on. Putting clothes on, you enter the right first and the left second. Taking it off, the left first, then the right. So that's the principle. Anything that is done like that, giving even giving something with the right hand. Okay, it's recommended to give with the right hand. These are adab. No one's sinful for not doing so, but these are good adab to stick to. And we said one of the biggest benefits of following these precise small sunan is what? What's one of the biggest benefits? Someone might belittle these things. Oh, come on, it's a jacket. You're going to put a jacket on. So what if you put it on right arm first or left arm first? Following the sunnah is the biggest, is one. Two, you're rewarded for it. What's three? What is it a sign of? Huh? It's a sign of fine love for the sunnah and taqwa. If someone is thinking about following the religion, in putting their jacket on, and putting their socks on, and you get yourself into that habit, then when it comes to other things, you're going to have consciousness of Allah there as well. So it's not something to belittle. If someone while putting their sock on thinks, okay, the right foot first, then the left, while taking off the left foot first, then the right, it means this person has got the sunnah, has got Allah in his conscious all the time. Okay, all the time. And if he doesn't dare to take off his sock with the right foot first, take off the right sock first, he's not going to dare to commit a sin. Or even things bigger than that, a major sin. And so these aren't things to belittle. Because when you get yourself into that habit, your whole life and every single action becomes a sunnah. Okay. Again, here, need will differ. Some people, for example, have very weak left hands. Try to write with the left hand, the pen will fall. Or they'll try and write with the left hand, they'll go all over the page, like mine. I can't write anything with my left hand. And similarly, some people might not have good balance with their left hand. And so istinja with the left hand might be very difficult. In such a case, the priority is to do istinja properly than to use your left hand. Because the whole point of istinja is purity, to purify yourself. So if it's between causing yourself even more of a mess, because you're using your left hand which is weak in balance, and between following the sunnah of using the left hand, then the best thing for you to do is to use your right hand and do things properly, rather than to use your left hand and mess yourself up or cause yourself a problem or whatever. Okay. So again, this is to keep in mind. Same thing with the siwak. We've spoken about the siwak, and we said the asl is that it's used with the left hand, according to the vast majority of scholars. Why? Because it's a case of removing impurity. Impurity is involved, or cleaning the teeth, getting rid of either an impurity, and if it's not an impurity, then getting rid of marks that aren't pleasant, even if they're not necessarily impure in terms of the sharia. Still, you're removing something, you're removing a harm, and so the left hand is better. However, the right hand should be used if a person is going to hurt themselves. Some people have no balance with their left hand, they're going to hurt their gums if they use the left hand with the siwak. So in such a case, use the right hand, you're better off than using the left hand. Because getting the siwak done properly takes priority over following the sunnah of using the left hand. Finally, we'll end with this hadith. What time is it, Isha? 8 o'clock? Or quarter to 8? 8 o'clock. Okay, we'll end a bit before that, so that we don't take too long. Especially these topics. But they're important to learn and get spot on. Be perfectly clear on exactly what one can do and what one can't do, and what also to do when faced with conflict. Which do you prioritize? عن سلمان رضي الله عنه قال لقد نهانا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أن نستقبل القبلة بغائط أو بول أو أن نستنجي باليمين أو أن نستنجي بأقل من 3 أحجار أو أن نستنجي برجيع أو عظم أخرجه مسلم. Salman al-Farsi رضي الله عنه. Ibn Hajar just mentions the end of this hadith. What happens here, a Jewish man, Jewish as far as I remember, he was not a Muslim, came to Salman radiallahu anhu and said, mockingly, your Prophet has taught you everything, even how to defecate. Taught you everything, even how to use the toilet. So Salman, rather than being embarrassed, thinking, oh yes, or feeling inferior to a person, as some people might feel, he said, yes, he taught us to not face the Qibla while using the toilet, nor to have our backs to it, and he taught us to not use less than 3 stones to make istijmar, and he forbade us from using the right hand while making istinja, and he forbade us from using bone or dung to use istinja. Okay, dung would be dry leftovers from other animals, and bones also prohibited to be used, because in the other hadith the Prophet ﷺ says it's your food, it's the food of, yes, your brothers the jinn, as the Prophet ﷺ says. Okay, it's the food of your brothers the jinn. And so a person doesn't use that, or dung, because dung is najis. And similarly a person doesn't use their right hand, and we've already covered this. The following hadith, we'll come on to facing the Qibla now. لا تستقبلوا القبلة بغائط أو بول ولا تستدبروها ولكن شرقوا أو غربوا. The Prophet ﷺ says in the hadith of Abu Ayyub radiallahu anhu, Abu Ayyub al-Ansari, neither face nor turn your back to the Qibla whilst using the toilet, but turn towards the east or the west. Turn towards the east or the west. This is a command to everyone or command to certain people? Is it? Think about facing the Qibla and having your back to it, and think about facing east or west. He said, but rather face the east or face the west. We here in the UK, where is Mecca in relation to us? East. So now the Prophet ﷺ says face east or west, but don't face the Qibla. So what do? Don't face east. Or west. So we don't face the Qibla, that means we don't follow the second command of facing east or west. So is this a general command? It's not a general command, it's for the people of Medina. People of Medina only. Like I said, if it's for us, east to us is the Qibla. So we can't both avoid the Qibla and at the same time face east. Yeah. And so this is a command to the people of Medina. The point here is, don't face the Qibla whilst using the bathroom. Now, in a hadith, Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhu, or radiallahu anhuma, the author doesn't mention it here. He says, I stood on the house of Hafsa radiallahu anha, and I saw the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam using the bathroom facing the Qibla. Okay, facing the Qibla. And this is why Abdullah ibn Umar understood that the prohibition of facing the Qibla is when in the open. This is the understanding of Abdullah ibn Umar and the majority of fuqaha. The majority of scholars are of this position. But facing the Qibla, the prohibition of facing the Qibla is when in the open. In the desert, for example, or outside in a park, and so on. As for being in a restricted area, then it's allowed. Why? Because the Prophet ﷺ did it. You can't prohibit something and then do something that opposes that. And so how do we combine between these two seemingly conflicting narrations? It is to say, the first applies when out in the open, or when there's nothing between you and the Qibla, and the second applies when there's a barrier, something between you and the Qibla. And that's why Abdullah ibn Umar was asked about this. He said, isn't it prohibited to face the Qibla? He said, that is when you are outside. As for there being something between you and the Qibla, then there's no problem. Okay? And he narrated this hadith in which he saw the Prophet ﷺ do that. Okay? And this is why it's very important to, whenever studying hadith, the person doesn't just read the hadith itself and the authenticity of the hadith itself. That will get you nowhere. That will get one nowhere. What a person does is read the hadith, learn the hadith, and how the scholars understood the hadith. Because a person can really go astray otherwise. And Shaikh Abdul Karim Khulay, rahimahullah, hafidhahullah, from the scholars of Riyadh, in hadith, he says, there was a group of students who were studying Sahih Muslim, the chapter of killing dogs, and studied that chapter together, and went out and started killing dogs. Any dog they saw, bang. Then the following lesson they sat together again, just the students, and they got to the chapter of the abrogation of killing dogs, meaning killings of dogs has been abrogated, it's no longer a ruling. Had they sat with a teacher or a Shaikh, who would have said to them, okay, we'll come later to the chapter of abrogation, which shows that this is no longer the case. Okay. Or a person reads the narrations relating to the mut'a of nisa, which is what the Shia still do now, and thinks, subhanAllah, I didn't know this was authentic hadith. Alhamdulillah. And then, had they sat with a person who understood abrogation, would know, they would know that this is long abrogated and prohibited until Yawm al-Qiyamah, as the Prophet ﷺ said. And so it's important to It's important to understand that. Sometimes also a hadith can mean something slightly different to what is apparent, and so on. So these are very important to know. You can whether you read about how the understanding of a hadith, or you listen to someone explain these hadith. Listening to someone explain it is better, and reading it is second best, because at least you have an understanding of what these hadith mean, and you won't go make an error easily. In fact, people have opposed the ijma' of the Muslims. The consensus of the ummah has been opposed because of this. Yeah, thinking that it's sufficient to just know the authenticity of a hadith. Knowing the authenticity is one thing. Even more important than that is knowing how to combine. Because these are imams. We imagine these imams of fiqh and hadith, they have the sunnah laid out in front of them, all at once. When we're thinking about, we think of one hadith, that's all that we can concentrate on at once. They have the whole sunnah laid out in front of them. So they know, okay, this goes here, this goes here, this goes here, this goes here. We have to understand this in the light of this. We have to understand this in this, because we have another narration that says this, and so on and so on. So it's very important to do that. And the more a person learns about hadith and the fiqh of hadith, the better a person does that. And the better a feel you'll get for the sharia. And Ali ibn al-Madini and Ibn Abi Hatim and Abu Hatim, rahmatullahi alayh, two imams of hadith, say, when it came to hadith, people used to think we are magicians. Because they would tell them, this hadith is not from the words of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the person would say, but look at the chain of narration, all trustworthy narrators. And Ali radiallahu anhu, Ali ibn al-Madini would say, this is not from the words of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because he's learned the words of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam so much, he knows exactly what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would say and wouldn't say. And same comes to the person who's learned the rulings of the Sharia and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. You know it so well that you know what would be part of it and what would be against it. And the more a person practices and repeats and revises and repeats and practices, acts upon, more importantly, the more a person will, you will see that you end up doing things that are in accordance with the Sunnah, even when you didn't know that was a Sunnah. Because you have such a good, strong feel for how the Prophet ﷺ acted in different scenarios. Okay, just like playing football, for example. Just like playing football, or whatever, any other kind of activity. A person practices long enough, you get such a good feel for the ball, whatever the position of the ball, whatever the position of your body and so on, you can get the ball wherever you want. With time and practice, someone who's just started out football can barely make contact with the ball, loses balance trying to kick the ball. And with time, you get it wherever you want, without even thinking. Comes to you, bang, straight to exactly where you wanted it. All of that comes with time. Same thing happens here. So it's important to revise knowledge as much as possible. Think about the knowledge that has passed us, that we've listened to and heard, and think about how much we've retained. We might have retained 1% of it. Lots of knowledge. I'm sure we all know very well. Lots of knowledge we've listened to, the number of classes we've attended, halaqas we've listened to, and lectures and so on. But a large number of it is forgotten quickly. One, because much of it may not be acted upon, and two, because it's not revised. It's not being revised. Okay, we'll in this final hadith of Aisha radiallahu anha, whenever the Prophet says, whoever goes to relieve himself must conceal himself. You don't need to explain that. That's very clear. We've spoken about it. Aisha radiallahu anha, أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم كان إذا خرج من الغائط قال غفرانك. When the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم came out of the bathroom, would say غفرانك. Oh Allah, grant me your forgiveness. Grant me your forgiveness. We'll end things. We'll end it there. Grant me your forgiveness. The Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم would say, one, some of the scholars say, because an opportunity to remember Allah has been missed. Subhanallah. Such a small period of time, the chance to remember Allah has been missed. And so seeking forgiveness for that. And some scholars say seeking forgiveness because of my shortcomings, despite the blessing of being able to use the bathroom. It's a massive blessing. Imagine a person has what's in their body blocked in and it's not able to come out. That would cause so much discomfort. A person wasn't able to urinate, a person wasn't able to use the bathroom properly. That would be an unbelievable amount of discomfort and difficulty and pain. So it's a massive blessing. And these things do need to be remembered as much as possible. وَلَئِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. And the more a person shows gratitude to Allah, the more Allah gives them more. And these small things especially that are easily forgotten have to be kept in mind. Okay, Wallahu a'lam, sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad. Usually we take a hadith from the comprehensive book. If you want, we can delay that till next week if people are out of energy. Brothers, next week?
Just a point, what was the second point of saying Ghufranak?
Yes. So they have two reasons for saying Ghufranak. The first, this was a time where I didn't remember Allah because I'm using the bathroom.
Yeah.
And so I seek forgiveness for not remembering Allah in that time. And the second was, I seek forgiveness due to my shortcomings. So the shortcomings and mistakes that I make, despite Allah's blessing of giving me the ability to use the bathroom. So Allah's blessed us with a huge blessing of being able to use the bathroom, and still we're sinful and still make mistakes and so on. This alone would ruin our lives. This alone, not being able to urinate properly alone, would ruin our lives. And so it's something to definitely be grateful about. Oh, yeah. We'll take one hadith, inshaAllah. Now here, عن ابن مسعود رضي الله عنه قال سألت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أي الذنب أعظم. Ibn Mas'ud رضي الله عنه is from the fuqaha of the companions, from the big scholars of the companions, and he was known for being the reciters of Quran. And he says رضي الله عنه, I asked the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, which sin is most serious? And he said, أن تجعل لله ندا, that you attribute a partner to Allah. And this is the essence of what is known in the Quran and in the Sunnah as shirk. Attributing a partner to Allah. Okay, giving someone something that is only worthy for Allah, that is only befitting of Allah. If I say, for example, to Brother Asif, you are knowledgeable. Have I attributed a partner to Allah? Because Allah is the one who's knowing. Why not?
Claiming he knows the unseen.
Fine, I don't say you claim the unseen. I say knowing. Based on the principle I've just mentioned now. Have we attributed a partner to Allah? Why? Because remember, the principle is attributing to someone other than Allah something that is only for Allah. Complete knowledge is only for Allah. As for knowledge, is not only for Allah. Okay? Knowledge alone is not only for Allah. Meaning a human being can have knowledge. Okay, a person can be knowing, can have knowledge. Okay. A person can be merciful. Okay, as Allah describes the Prophet ﷺ in the Quran. بِالْمُؤْمِنِينَ رَءُوفٌ رَحِيمٌ لَقَدْ جَاءَكُمْ رَسُولٌ مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ عَزِيزٌ عَلَيْهِ مَا عَنِتُّمْ حَرِيصٌ عَلَيْكُمْ بِالْمُؤْمِنِينَ رَءُوفٌ رَحِيمٌ sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. With the believers he is رَءُوفٌ رَحِيمٌ. Okay, these are attributes that can be given to humans as well. So it's not considered attributing a partner to Allah. Something that belongs only to Allah. وَلَا يَعْلَمُ الْغَيْبَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ. No one knows the unseen except Allah. That's an example. Okay, bringing back the dead to life only for Allah. And so no one can be attributed with that. And so on, and so on. Okay. Then he said, رضي الله عنه, ثُمَّ أي. Then what? He said, to kill your child, fearing that it will share with you your food. Alhamdulillah, this perhaps isn't something that affect most of us. However, it can happen in many parts of the world. A person has a child and they're simply not able to look after them, and they're a burden. They look at them as a burden, and so they think it's best for us to get rid of this child, kill this child, and it will make life easier for us. Prophet ﷺ considered that the second biggest sin, and this hadith is in the Sahihain, by the way, Bukhari and Muslim. Then he said, what next? قال ثم أي قال أن تزني بحليلة جارك. He said, finally, to commit adultery with the neighbor's wife. Reading this makes me feel like throwing up. A person committing adultery with a person's wife is considered such an unbelievable evil, and that's why the punishment is so severe. That's why the punishment, being killed for murder in the Sharia, the punishment for murder is less than the punishment for zina, because of how severe it is. The person has murdered a person, according to Ahmad and Abu Hanifa, they're killed using the sword. Okay, they're killed using the sword. Okay, the leader, the judge, Qadi, the Hakim, rules by killing a person with the sword. Whereas a person who is married and commits such an act, then the punishment is being stoned until death. That's far longer in pain. Far longer in pain. Why? Some people might be shocked to hear such a thing. Why? Because the consequences are unbelievable. It's far worse than death, wallah. Far worse than death that a person has such a thing happen. And it's very important that a person respects that. No one wants a person to disrespect their wife or their daughter or their sister. And so just like we don't like that done to us, similarly we have to think we need to keep away from other people's wives and daughters and sisters. Similarly, we can't, on the one hand, the moment a person lays a finger or lays a blink on our wives, we feel like running them over with our jeep, and we have no problem doing it. But when it comes to us doing the same, we find no, that's somebody else's wife as well, that's somebody else's daughter as well, somebody else's sister as well. That's why when the young man came to the Prophet ﷺ and said to him, "O Messenger of Allah, give me permission for zina only. Nothing else, I'll do everything else. I'll pray and give zakat. Just permit zina for me." So the Prophet ﷺ said, "Atarda'u li ummik." Would you want that for your mother? He said, "No, a'udhu billah." He said, "Would you want that for your sister?" He said, "No, a'udhu billah." He said, "Would you want that for your auntie?" He said, "No, a'udhu billah." He said, "Similarly, people don't want it for theirs." Then the Prophet ﷺ made dua for him, and the boy said, after that, this thing became the most hated thing to me. The most hated thing to me became this thing. It can happen. A person might, especially in the time that we're in, this might become an addiction, looking or these kinds of desires. But the point is, Allah is able to get rid of all these kinds of diseases and poisons, and they have to be fought against. There has to be a solid fight from the Muslims against these things, because they're ruining families, and this topic is ages. The point is, they're ruining people's hearts, they're ruining our families, they're ruining our hearts, they're ruining our minds, and so these things need to be fought. These things need to be fought. There's enough difficulty within a marriage. The last thing a person wants is for a marriage to be ruined and destroyed because the husband and the wife have certain expectations or certain ideas of how things should be because of immorality. Okay, or a person loses affection for their partner, their husband or wife, because of seeking things in the haram. To the extent that a person slept with his wife thinking that it's somebody else, thinking it's someone other than his wife. And when he found out that it's his wife, he said, "Subhanallah, even though it's not a time to say subhanallah if you've just done such a thing. He says, how delicious you are in haram. What does that mean? Meaning, the act is the same. The act is the same. What this woman has as well. What you're going to do with this woman, you're going to do with that one. But he enjoyed this one because it was haram. That's how corrupt the heart has become. That exactly the same act has much more meaning and he enjoys it much more when it's in haram. And this is the problem. The problem isn't one sin. One sin is not the problem. One look is not the problem. One this is not the problem. The problem is you continue to do these things, the heart flips around and becomes like the heart of an animal. You don't distinguish between right and wrong, and when you want to stop yourself from doing something, you're not able to. And so this is something to be extra careful of. And there has to be also some ghira from men for their partners and families and so on. Ghira translated, I've heard translated as protective jealousy. That's something extremely important. Extremely important. If you have no issue for the person disrespecting your female relatives, there's a big problem. There's a big problem. And once ghira from men goes, then shyness from women also goes. And so this is something important to keep in mind. Anyways, this we'll end with that hadith inshallah. And we'll continue next week. The same chapter, because the chapters are relatively long, chapter of relieving oneself. However, a lot of the ahadith are similar, so we'll read through the ahadith without much explanation, because we've already gone through most of the explanation. Then we'll move on to the following chapters. Allahu a'lam. Sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sallam.